You're listening to Sarah Hagan Backstage, with interviews and insights from years inside the music industry. Join Sarah as she talks with masters of their crafts, finding out what makes them tick, both inside and outside of the music business.
Welcome to Sarah Hagan Backstage. My guest today, John Wackerman, has had an incredible career as a touring drummer, writing and recording music for television and commercials, and running his recording studio out of Las Vegas. He has also created an amazing series called Drum Duets that has 2 installments with some of the world's most prolific drummers, and he is currently working on a 3rd. We are going to talk about all of these things and more, so come along with me as I catch up with John Wackerman. John, welcome to the podcast.
Are we live?
We are live.
I stole that from Vanucci. Isn't Ronnie great?
Ronnie's the best. I love that man. Yes.
He's an awesome drummer, but he's also just an awesome human being. And him and Brooks, they have the same birthday. Did you know that?
February 15th.
They were almost Valentine babies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Brooks and Ronnie are 2 of my favorite people. And when I heard that they had the same birthday, I was like, that just makes so much sense.
Yeah, they both have the same dry humor.
Yes.
And they both send the same jokes when they text. Yeah, it's perfect.
It is. It's perfect. Perfect match right there.
Yeah.
Yes, we are live, and you have the most fabulous backdrop. For anyone who is listening on a podcast platform and not watching on YouTube, we're in your studio right now.
Yes, and my studio has lights. And we built it, me and my wife, over the pandemic. And we kind of made, this room is a 1,600 square foot room, the live room. Mm-hmm. So it's more of like a multimedia room. So we do recording and everything, but we also do filming and all that kind of stuff. Hence the lights and all the stuff.
Yeah, it is fantastic. And so did you find that in the pandemic, you had to adjust we all had to adjust, but I guess the question is, how did you adjust to that? You built this studio, you started doing a lot of things in-house, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, we built the studio before the pandemic hit. We had ideas for it going back and forth. And then, once it hit, when everything shut down, Rob Katz, who's the engineer, he engineered that studio at the Palms here in Vegas. And then they shut down. He was looking for a place. We'd been talking for a couple of years, so we just kind of expedited it and then got the studio done, which is great because a lot of people came and recorded because they couldn't tour and all that kind of stuff. So it turned out to be perfect timing. And we got all our materials right before everything went up like 10 times, which is crazy.
Yeah, I was going to say that. It's great that you did build it before the pandemic, because things were not only more expensive, but a lot of things were on back order and it was tough to get equipment.
Exactly. And we had our crews in here and everything, but we had like the limited crews and everybody had masks on and all that kind of stuff. But it worked out.
Yeah, that's great. And so it looks fantastic. And tell me about some of the things that you've been doing there.
So before the pandemic, luckily, I was always doing a lot of internet sessions. So doing drum tracks for people and everything. During the pandemic, that just kind of picked up, which was nice. Before that, I was doing a lot of shows here in Vegas and all of them shut down. So it was a great kind of thing, and Skyping lessons and all that kind of stuff, And
that was going to be my next question, the lessons thing, because I think amazingly enough, the pandemic gave everyone a new way to teach.
Right.
And one of the things that I think is amazing that came out of all of that is that there's a way to reach our favorite drummers now to book lessons, or to book mentoring sessions, all of these things. It's like, those were never possibilities. Everyone was going on the road so often and all of that. But now there's like so many platforms to reach your drumming influences, to be able to have a lesson or talk with them or have an info session, right?
Yeah, and like you said, I think it created a lot of stuff that other people weren't thinking about doing. And then also, I think when the pandemic hit, everybody reassesses, their life and all that kind of stuff. I think that there was a lot of positive stuff, a lot of negative stuff, but also a lot of positive stuff, which is kind of like when we tour, like, Sarah, it's like there's so many things out of our control. Planes, buses and all that kind of stuff late, and you get to the gig and you can't sound check, all that kind of stuff. The pandemic was kind of like that. And I think we just all adapted, right?
Right. One of the things I think that musicians are really great at is rolling with what happens, making adjustments,
Right.
kind of going with the flow, because you learn that from life on the road and from the fact that things change often. And a lot of times
Right.
you are reliant on someone else's schedule or a, bigger production. So I do think that, I've been saying that resiliency is kind of the theme of our industry throughout this whole thing, and to see things coming back and to see tours happening again and people getting back out on the road and getting back together. It's so refreshing.
Yeah. And I mean, things that we took for granted and stuff, you don't take for granted anymore, right? I mean, it was a whole reset, and,
Yeah.
you know,
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the things I've heard often is that musicians have kind of reassessed how they spend their time and what they spend time on. Do you find that
right.
to be true for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely more. I mean, I think we always know that, time is our biggest commodity, right? But then
Yeah.
we get into certain things. You're making money, you're doing this, you're doing all these projects and everything. I think you get away from certain things of, okay, why did I start playing music? Why did I start playing drums? Maybe I won't do this, maybe I'll do this instead, and be a little more pure like we used to be, right? When we started.
Yeah, like kids again, right?
Like kids again, yeah. I mean, I
And
think we're all kids in this industry, right? We never really grow up.
and that's why I think everyone's so young in this industry, right? Everybody stays young because we're all kids at heart.
Right, we totally are. And I think, we're lucky that we get to play music, that we get to express, which I think is one of the biggest spiritual things that you can do. Music transcends everything. It transcends, I mean, rhythm is like the number one thing that they find when they find, people that never, had the internet and all that kind of stuff years ago and everything. It's like everybody's playing drums. It's like crazy, right? Rhythm is like in our soul.
Absolutely. And if you go back to every time in history, there's rhythm. There's, that's the language. It's the
Right.
communication tool. It's just found in so many different places throughout the history of humanity. And, it is amazing, and it's unifying. One of the things that I think about often is just how music brings people together, and it doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. It doesn't matter nothing matters. Just the fact that you're together enjoying music, and it's such a unifying experience. And I don't know, it's just that one thing I feel can't be touched by, anything that separates people.
Exactly. I have a friend that I went to high school with, and we were in drumline together, and he's a highly successful surgeon. And he comes to Vegas, and we connect every once in a while and everything. But what he does is he still plays drums. Like on the weekend, that's his stress-free thing. And it helps his practice, it helps his life and everything. And there's something to that, and we all know that. Like when you practice and stuff, it's kind of a Zen experience. People say spiritual or something like that, because we're doing repetitive things like rudiments and all that kind of stuff. But it's definitely, then they have drum circles and all that kind of stuff for therapy. All that stuff it's real powerful.
The music therapy thing too, that is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
But I think I do agree that it's healing. I have those days where I'm just like, I just like need to sit down and play drums, and even for 20 minutes, and then you feel better afterward. You just feel better. I don't know what it is, but
it changes your energy, right? It changes your whole flow, your whole energy. Maybe something that was bothering you doesn't bother you as much,
Yeah, it's amazing. It's so true. Yeah. And I want to go back to something too. We just talked about like being kids and that feeling of playing when we're children. And I just want to go back a little bit in time and talk about your start, because we all think about your family in this industry as being kind of like, it's like a drumming royal family. You come from this amazing group.
it really
players.
wasn't amazing. I mean, looking back, you know, and of course with Chad, my oldest brother, and then Bob, who played bass, he actually did play drums too. He played drums in marching band and drumline. And he took from Murray Spivak, who we all took from too. He took rhythm on bass and everything.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, it was one of those, growing up in it, you don't realize. But I mean, at 5, my dad had me playing piano.
Mhm.
Chad was already playing drums, and Bob was playing bass. And then yeah, the story is, you know, my dad bought a boat, and then my cousin Mike, he fell off the boat and
Oh,
hit his head, busted it open. They had to take him to the hospital and
oh
everything. And
no.
I think that's what's the matter with Mike still. But anyways, so my mom said, you know, okay, we can't have this. We got, you know, the boys here, and we don't want them to hurt themselves. So my dad sold the boat, and he bought a pair of vibes because he always wanted to play vibes. And so they were in the living room, and I thought vibes was more fun than piano because it's, you know,
Mhm.
more percussive and all that kind of stuff. I could barely do it. But so then my dad said, okay, if you want to play vibes, got to get you lessons. So I started lessons there. And my dad and my mom, I mean, they were like so gun ho. I don't know how they had so much time, but I mean, they would have us at lessons. My dad would take us to lessons. And then my dad had the jazz band, the junior high
Mhm.
jazz band. He had people from 3rd grade to 8th grade. And we would have jazz band before school, like 6:30. Then we would have night rehearsals, 6 to 8. And then we would go to jazz festivals on the weekend. And then we would do that with concert band and with orchestra. And it was just crazy. And then in our garage, we always had drums set up. My dad, you know, was a drummer. My
Yes.
dad would also play gigs at night after he taught. And then in the summers, he would come here to Vegas and he would play shows here. So we were fully immersed in music. And then when we weren't doing all that, we'd be going to drum clinics. We'd be going to PAS conventions.
Mhm.
I mean, I saw drum clinics from Hal Blaine, from Billy Cobham, from Louis Bellson, Buddy Rich. I mean, it was like heavily immersed in all these amazing people. And my dad knew them all. So I'd be hanging out with these people as a kid
Mhm.
and just like soaking all the stuff up as a sponge. And so, yeah, so I got into vibes. Chad was playing drums in jazz band, so I couldn't play drums. Bob was playing bass. So then they didn't have a vibe player, but I had to audition. You know, my dad had me
Of
audition and
course.
everything. Just funny. So I think I got in jazz band at 6. And then he used to get us gigs like we played at the NAMM show. We played at like all these places he would have our jazz band play and do some TV stuff and everything. And it was just a crazy, great time to grow up. And then Brooks was born, and I used to play Buddy Rich albums and Tony Williams albums under his crib.
Oh, I
And
love that.
I know, right? We were just like that total crazy drum family.
Mhm.
And then from there, I played vibes, and then I was always playing drums because they were always around. And our garage wasn't soundproofed, and we had really cool neighbors, except when one neighbor moved in, and then they kept calling the cops. And I think Brooks told you that. And
He did.
and
He
then
told me that story.
yeah, and then they're like coming over, like threatening to like take our drums and stuff. It's like, what? You know? So then we all soundproofed the garage. You know, we got like triple drywall. We got built the walls inside the walls, all that kind of stuff. And so that helped a lot, you know.
It's amazing.
But yeah,
So
but it was, looking back, it was like a real uh, amazing time. And my parents were just like so supportive. I mean, I remember one time, I think I must have been 10 or 11, and I was doing a PAS drum competition. And for
yes.
some reason, my dad, he got something, or he had to be somewhere else. So my mom drove me up. We were in Seal Beach, and drove me up to Northridge, which is about probably about an hour drive, you know, to the valley and everything. And my dad took the van, and then my mom, the other car that we had was a truck, and it was a stick. Well,
Mhm.
my mom didn't drive stick. So my mom said, you know what? You got to get up to this thing. So we're just going to go really, really early. So my mom got in and got on the freeway. Well, she couldn't get it out of second gear. So
Oh, no.
we're going like 30 miles per hour on the freeway. And it took us like 2.5 hours to get there. And then we put the flashers on and all that kind of stuff. And my mom was like, you know, we're going to get you there. And then, yeah, and then we got there, and then luckily, I think I won that contest. I did a bunch of them, but that's how determined my parents were, and they kind of, set that into us, just being
Yeah.
real determined and practicing every day, and all that stuff, which we thought was normal.
Yes.
I never knew that wasn't normal until we grew up, and I was like, wow, my parents were like superhuman.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I just have to say, your parents would come to NAMM every year.
Yeah,
And
right.
right? And I would it was like a highlight for me for
Yeah, they're
NAMM to
awesome.
see them and see you all together when you would all be there. It was the sweetest thing. And I mean, just to have that kind of support is incredible. I
Yeah,
love that story.
and their support is like over the top. I mean, when Chad got with Frank Zappa, none of us really knew much about Frank, and
Mhm.
Chad just got it. And I remember we went to a rehearsal, and I mean, my parents are musicians, and they're pretty, they're into other stuff, but they're still kind of conservative. And then Chad invited us to Frank's rehearsal, so we go up to his warehouse, and we go in and everything, and they start playing, and then Frank's being Frank, who is, he's a genius, but he was like outrageous, and there was like all these blow up dolls on stage, and like flying dildos, and like all this crazy stuff going on. And I remember at the end, my parents were like, wow, Chad, you sounded great, and Frank's a genius. It was like none of that stuff like phased them, which was funny, because you would have thought that would have phased them, but they just loved music, and they loved entertainment, they loved all that stuff. And
Yes, they understood like the creativity and the genius behind it, whatever it was that was going on.
Exactly. And then they always go to all our gigs, and if you were playing a jazz gig to 40 people, to them they would make you feel just as important as if you're playing an arena. They come to both gigs. You know what I mean? It was more about the playing and the music than the pageantry, I guess.
So amazing. It's incredible. And also like for them to teach that work ethic, because I always say like playing drums is not something that it's not like an easy thing. Like you don't
No.
it's a big instrument, and it's expensive, and it's loud, and it takes up a lot of space, and it takes a lot of time to really get to the point where you can consider yourself a professional musician on the drums, right? And so I think that like that work ethic is so important to success, like understanding how much time and effort goes into it. Your mom taking extra time, leaving extra time because she knew it was going to take extra time to get there, driving in second gear. Like that's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, all that's helped all of us, I think, in all our careers, just being consistent, knowing that we have a reputation that you'd be dependable, and I mean, that's with any professional, right? And I know it's across the board with all drummers and stuff. I mean, I remember Jeff Porcaro told me, if you're on time, you're late. So his whole thing was always, you have to be early. And my parents were always that way, and little things like that. And I remember when we were hanging out with Hal Blaine, him just talking about playing for the song and stuff, which are, especially when you're a kid and stuff like that, those are heavy concepts, because we all want to do chops. We all want to, learn stuff and everything, but then actually playing for the song and supporting the singer and grooving hard and all that kind of stuff, those are harder concepts, I think, especially when you first begin. And my parents, really, drove those concepts in with us and everything, and playing in bands all the time. And I was fortunate enough to, play in a ton of bands early. I grew up in Orange County, and at the time you have amazing players like John Petitucci and all that kind of stuff, and you're doing all these gigs, and they're on it, so it was a great time to grow up, and it was a great time to see all the musicality that you could learn.
Absolutely. I feel like, you mentioned how your dad was friends with all of these drummers and these musicians, and kind of grew up like surrounded by this like who's who of musical legends, so that must have been incredible.
Yeah, and then my dad was smart. It's like he would have the guest artists come out for a concert. So we'd have like Maynard Ferguson or Louis Bellson, and they would play with the junior high band. They'd play like one song, and we'd get the rehearse with them, and it helped the kids, and it helped all of us. And just you know, and a difference of a pro coming in on your junior high band was amazing. You know, you're like, oh, that's what music is about, you know?
Yeah, that is amazing. And you went on to play with Maynard Ferguson.
Yeah, I did.
Right.
He was awesome. My brother Bob, me and my brother Bob played with him at the same time after the Bissonette brothers did. And
That's amazing.
yeah, it was so funny. The weirdest thing about Maynard, which you wouldn't think, is like he knew everybody. Like I remember we played up at the San Francisco, the Great American Music Hall, and after backstage was Robert Plant and Neil Schon, and then when we played in New York, Steely Dan came out. It's like all these people, all these people that you wouldn't think. You know, I met all these people. And it's like that is so odd. You know, you wouldn't think, but it's like I always say, everybody likes to put people in boxes. You know, and musicians are musicians. It's funny when people say, well, even when Brooks got with the Bends, you know, a lot of fans are like, oh, he's a punk drummer, he can't play metal, you know, and all that stuff is just not true, you know. And it goes with so many drummers, there's so many musicians, and you know, unless you want to be that kind of drummer and just be in a band, most musicians, they listen to everything, right? And we all try to play everything, we all try to grab influences from different places, and
sure. I think
crossover.
Absolutely. And I think like a lot of times that comes through in the music. If you have, you have multiple influences, you might be playing a metal gig or you might be playing a jazz gig, but you're bringing all of that's kind of in you to the table. And I think that makes like a really well-rounded drummer as well, because
absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, when Brooks got into Avenged Sevenfold, I mean, I was, of course, like so incredibly excited, but I was also really, really excited to see him play that kind of music too, because I knew what he was capable of. I knew what was in him as far as his playing goes, but I was like really excited just to see and hear him play the music. And of course, like he's so fantastic.
Same here. Yeah.
Right. So great. And I want to talk too about another thing that you've done besides all the touring and the amazing musicians you've played with, the Drum Duets project.
Yes. My passion project.
It's so great. You know, like, I mean, all of the drummers that you've had on are just so fantastic, but tell us about the project, please, because it's so great.
So the project I've had for a long time before I started it. And then, so when I started volume 1, I was just, I think it was just something that I wanted to do. I mean, I never knew anybody that, I loved writing drum pieces and stuff. And then I always wanted to write them for other amazing drummers and put it together and do it. I just didn't know, well, I didn't have the time at first. And then finally I was like, you know what, I'm just going to make the time for it. And so then I just did it, and I was like, okay, who do I want on it? And I had my wish list and everything. And the main guy that I want on it was Gadd, of course, right? Yeah. Steve. Yeah. And so we went to a Zildjian party, and you know how the Zildjian parties were. They were this was early 2000s after the NAMM show. And it was one of those nights. I think you might have even been there. It was with honoring Louis Bellson and Roy Haynes.
You know what? I was not there. I think I helped set that up, but I was not there that year. I think I started going to maybe the year after that.
Oh, okay, cool. So that was the party, and Steve was there, and I'd been telling my wife Linda, you know, it's like, you know, Steve Gadd, I want to get Steve Gadd, blah blah blah. So then, so she was like, you know, well, where is he? And I was like, oh, he's over there. And of course, you know, at those parties, Steve was there. He had like 50 people around him. You know, it was like a full on swarm. So it's like, I didn't want to be that guy going over and you know, pushing through and everything, and then saying, hey, you play on my Drum Duets project. So so Linda was like, she's like getting bored, right? She's like, well, we got to go. So I was talking to somebody else or whatever. Then I turn around. Linda got Carol and Steve right there, turned around, and Linda said, hey, Steve agreed to do your Drum Duets project. I was like, because I never met Steve before. And I was like, oh, hey, Steve.
Oh my
Awesome.
gosh, I
And so
love that.
Steve was like, yeah, talk to John to Christopher, get my number, and then work it all out. So yeah, I couldn't have done that without my wife. She went up and fully got it going. So he was the first one on my volume 1 project. So then we worked it out and everything, and he only had one day. He was like, okay, I could do it, but you have to fly into Rochester. We recorded at a studio at Linden Oaks where James Taylor did one of his albums there. And Steve was just getting off tour, I think, with Eric Clapton. So Steve flies in the night before. We meet him. Me and my wife, we fly to Rochester. And I can't remember when it was, but I know it was snowing. So it was cold. And we get there and we get to the studio and everything. And Steve comes in at 10. And he's like, okay, I can do it. It's my day off. I only have an hour. I'll give you an hour. That's it. It can't go over. So I'm like,
Wow.
I'm like, okay, yeah, no problem. We could do it in an hour, blah, blah, blah. So we show up, get drum sounds and everything. And then as soon as we're ready, like we talked it down and everything, as soon as we're ready to record, the SSL console goes out.
Oh no.
Yeah, it completely dies. And so, and engineers like scrambling and everything. And Steve, he's like totally cool. He's, doing coffee and everything. And Linda's talking to him. We're all talking and everything.
Yeah.
But I'm like stressing like crazy because I'm like, okay, now our hour, I'm watching the clock. It's like, oh, okay, now we have 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, now we have a half hour. They can't get the console up. And they have to use the console. They don't have enough mic pre's to do it. So then finally they get the console up at like 11:45. So we literally like have 15 minutes. So, but Steve, we ran through it. It's like, got the first take and I'm like, okay, we're done. Get out of here, Steve. We're done. It's great.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. And Steve's like, no, I want to do another one, and I'm like sweating because it's like 5 to like 11. And I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, no, I feel like I want to do another one. I'm like, okay, great. So he did another one. Boom, we were out of there.
I love it.
It was
So great.
awesome. Yeah.
Steve, he's just the best.
Yeah. And I mean, Steve, he's like so laid back and so humble and just a great guy and kills it. He completely killed it.
Absolutely.
So after I got Steve on volume 1, it was easy because I had him. So it's like anybody else I approached, they're like, well, who's on it? I'm like, well, Gadd's on it, and so that just opened the door to all that stuff. And
that's amazing. And shout out to your wife, to Linda. Thank you.
Right. Linda, shout out to you.
I mean, that's incredible. Not the other artists that you had on there. I'll just list a few because they're all amazing. But you had Dennis Chambers,
awesome.
Steve Smith, Peter Erskine, Taylor Hawkins.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So Taylor, okay. Try not to get emotional, but I know you knew Taylor too. I mean, Taylor was talking about another guy that was just amazing and full of bravado and so I'm going to digress for a second, but it's so sad that he's gone. I can't believe that he's gone. I mean, I still can't take his number out of my phone because I want to send him something funny. But yeah, so Taylor, he was friends with Brooks, and I said, hey Brooks, I said, ask Taylor if he'd play on my drum duets, and this was volume 2, and so Brooks goes, okay, cool. So Brooks calls him up and he goes, hey Taylor, my brother wants you to play, on his drum duets. And and Taylor goes, yes, and then hangs up. And so Brooks calls me back and he goes, well, T-Hawk said, yeah. I said, oh, cool. What else did he say? Well, he hung up. So all he said was yes and hung up. Yeah. So I was like, well, am I supposed to call him? Am I supposed to email him? What am I? Brooks was like, I don't know. Just call him. Here's his number. So I called him up and, he was 1,000 places, he was doing all his stuff and everything. So I left, I think 5 or 6 messages and then I finally got a hold of him And his first thing was like, "Oh man," he goes, "I didn't call you back, did I?" I was like, "No." And he goes, "Oh, I'm such a jerk," blah 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 blah. And he's like, "Yeah, no, I'd love to do it," blah 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 blah. And so I told him, I said, "Okay." So I wrote a piece. I said, I think it'd be great, and then we talked about like Rush, and we talked about Yes, and we talked about all these prog rock bands, because that's what Taylor was totally into, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I got off the phone. I was all excited, and I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to write him a prog rock piece because it's going to be fun. It'd be great. It'd be great to hear Taylor do this and everything. So I wrote him the piece, and then I sent him an MP3, and I sent him some notes and stuff. And I left a message, and then we played phone tag again, and then he just texted me back. He goes, "Yeah, I got it." And so I said, "Well, do you have any questions or anything, or blah 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 blah?" Because normally I talk it through with another drummer. There'd be like some questions and everything. And Taylor's like, "No, it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome." So I'm like, "Okay, great." And then I think 8 months. Was it 8 months or 9 months? I think it was 8 months. So then 8 months later, because we're trying to get scheduling down and everything, we finally get them. And I texted him a couple more times. I said, "Hey, are you sure? Do you want me to change anything? Do you like the drum duet? Blah, blah, blah." "No, it's great. It's going to be great." So I was like, "Okay, killer." So he comes up the drum channel. We got there, I think, at 10. Mm-hmm. And Taylor, he comes out, and he doesn't bring his drum tech. He brought Wiley, who runs the Foo Fighter studio now. But he was a guitar tech. And so it was funny because, I was helping Taylor set up his own drums, and Wiley was pretty much hanging out because he's not a drummer, But so we set up his drums and everything. And then Taylor goes, "You know what? I didn't listen to it. And then I just listened to it in the car." And he goes, "Why'd you write me a prog rock piece?" And I was like, "Taylor, because that's all we talk about. All we do is do that. And we text each other, all this prog rock 70s stuff, which is awesome." He goes, "Oh man." He goes, "It's really hard." And I'm like, so now it's like the most uncomfortable situation ever, right? It's like, it's my project. I get Taylor there. He's like busier than anything. And now I'm like the jerk, right? I don't want to be that. So I'm like, "You know what? You don't have to do it. It's cool. I totally understand. You got all this stuff together." I said, we could do anything else if you want. We could jam or make it easy. And the thing I love about Taylor is he's like, "No, we're going to do it." So basically, we were there with a whole film crew up at the drum channel. It just wasn't me and Taylor. And so we're learning, all the parts and everything. And it wasn't that easy. And so we were there all day, literally. And by the end of the day, he nailed it. And it goes back to that not giving up kind of attitude that I think, in life, people that are up on a high level, I think they all do that, where it's just like, you're not going to give up. You're just going to keep doing it and all that kind of stuff. And then after he did it, my brother Chad, he was playing with James Taylor, and the Foo Fighters were on the same festival or something. And Chad called me up, and he said, Taylor ran up to me and said, "Your brother writes really, really hard stuff." So I thought that was funny.
I love that so much. That's a great story.
But he was like just such a, a perfectionist. He wouldn't let up and just, did it. And the Final Duet is awesome. I mean, he's playing great, and he has such great energy and everything. And he actually taught me how to do a one-handed roll, which I had no idea that he could do that. And so the whole duet starts with him doing that, because I was like, who knew,
Yeah.
But yeah, but he grew up in Laguna Beach, as you know, and I was the only brother born in Laguna Beach. And my parents lived there for 3 years when I was a kid. And then if we didn't move out of Laguna Beach, we would have been one street over from where Taylor grew up.
Wow.
How ironic is that, as Alanis would say.
All right. Well, there you go. We've just tied it all together there.
That's right.
That's amazing. And Laguna Beach is just such what an art-focused community.
Artsy,
right?
Yeah, artsy town and awesome place. Yeah.
Beautiful. I actually just went there for, recently for the first time, and was just amazed by just all the art, like everywhere you looked, and it's beautiful.
It's such a creative town. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's killer.
Yeah, amazing. But yeah, I mean, the artists that you had on that were just so fantastic, and I imagine that some of them were some of your influences too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Steve Gadd, Dennis Chambers, Alex Acuna did it, and he was amazing. Yeah, and then of course got so my goal of that whole thing is, because I'm kind of diverse, I wanted, like I have Scott Johnson, Scojo from the Blue Devils, all the way to Bernie Dressel from Brian Setzer to Dennis to Taylor. Like, I didn't want it to be just like a fusion project, or I wanted all these different influences, because to me that's more interesting too. And I tried to write the pieces just to be 3.5, 4 minutes, even if we did longer versions and stuff, because I wanted them to be more like pieces. I love drum jams and everything, but I didn't want this to be like 20-minute thing of everybody. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. And it's so diverse. Like you mentioned Scott Johnson and the way like his setup is. And I mean, all of that, it's just so fascinating how different one is from the next. And your setup too, in those drum duets, I mean, you have the drums up high. It's amazing to see you play like that. And sometimes
I started that
right?
So I started basically for my toms high and then cymbals low. And I started that in high school, mainly just to mix things up. Like, I was kind of getting bored, and I mean, I love people that do stuff like that, like Terry Bozzio and Daru from Jack White and all that kind of stuff. Just because it's like, we're so creative in so many other ways, why not be creative in your setups? And I don't use that set all the time, but it is kind of challenging and different. And then when I toured with Kazumi Watanabe, I actually had a MIDI mallet cat that I play keyboard parts with that I put there, and then the toms were up. It made more sense,
Yeah, that's super cool.
And that was the best tour, by the way. So when we toured the U.S., we were sponsored by the Japanese government and Sapporo Beer. But everywhere we toured, we had amnesty plates on our cars.
Wow.
So, yeah, you could park anywhere. You can speed. They don't pull you over. You have amnesty. So it's like crazy. That's like the craziest tour that I did.
Wow. That sounds amazing.
So if you want to go on tour, kids, get sponsored by the government. That's the way to go.
That's a good tip. That's a pro tip right there.
Right? That's a pro tip right there.
And so if people want to see, if listeners and viewers want to see these drum duets, where can we direct them?
So Drum Channel is probably the best place to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, they're the best place to get it.
And
then I'm working on volume 3 as we speak.
That was going to be my next question. When are we going to see more?
Yep, we're going to see more now, and I have some commitments. Oh, and actually, your announcer, Mark Pusey, he committed to do a duet, so that's going to be cool.
I love that. Yes, Mark.
Isn't Mark awesome?
He's amazing. Amazing.
And he took from Murray Spivak as well, which was my drum teacher.
Oh my goodness, right. You know what? I didn't make that connection, but now that you say that, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I can write some hard stuff for him. It'd be great.
I think you should. He's fantastic. And he sings too. I don't know if you knew that. That might be.
I didn't know that, but all I know is that during the pandemic, he was out like saving people, like deep diving or something like crazy. He's like, he's MacGyver.
The RNLI in London, I think Royal National Lifeboat Institute, I think is what it stands for, but he's like a rescuer on the boats in the Thames River. Like, he's there.
Right.
I mean, he's on tour right now with Ed Sheeran, right? Or like,
right.
I think he's still out, but like in his spare time, he rescues people on lifeboats.
I know.
So,
I mean, who does that? How awesome. Yeah, no, he's an awesome guy.
So awesome. And he is the best tour guide in London. He like,
Oh, really?
oh my goodness, yes. Next time
I'm,
you are in London,
I'm gonna have to
have
hit him
Mark
up.
give you a tour. And not only will he knows all the history and everything, but he will show up at your hotel with snacks and
Oh, wow.
drinks, and he's that kind of guy. He's so great. I'm so excited you're going to work together. I can't wait to see
Yeah,
that.
so that's gonna be cool. And he can save your life. So that's
And it
always
gets,
good.
yeah, I mean, right? So in an
Right.
emergency, there he is.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. If you fall into the Thames River, he'll
Right.
save
Which
you.
which could happen, right? You never know. It could
Yes.
happen.
Absolutely. And I don't know, there's a great video, and it's out there, so we can say this and Mark won't get embarrassed by it. I think he actually posted it, but he saves a cat. He saves
No
a
way.
cat on the river, and the cat's not too happy about it at first, so it's a really, really funny video.
I gotta check
You
it
get
out.
a chance. I'll send that link to you.
Oh, that'd be killer.
No, but that's so great. I'm so excited about that. And so that's coming up. So you'll have a volume 3 coming up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you also, are you still doing TV? Like you were doing TV theme songs and commercial music and all of that stuff too, which
Yeah,
thought
I still do
fascinating.
like a lot of jingles and stuff like that. And then
Mhm.
well, the reason why we moved to Vegas was Terry Fator. He won America's Got Talent. And
Yes.
then he so he called up and everything, and I was telling Linda, I was like, well, at that time I was doing Megan Mullally's TV talk show. She's the girl from Will and Grace.
Yes.
And I have funny stories about her too. She actually, so the first day I was there, she came up and she goes, my first husband was a drummer, and I dated a couple other drummers, and I love drummers. So it's like instantly we totally got on. And actually, she dated a drummer that I know that's really famous that I can't say.
Oh my gosh! I wish I could say, but that's okay.
I know, good stories and all that stuff. So, anyways, I was doing her show that lasted about a year. We knew that it was wrapping up, because showbiz, it's funny because back then it's like the ratings we were getting were 4.3 million a day, and that wasn't like good enough to keep it on TV because Oprah was getting like 7. And then now these days, if you have like 1 million, you're gold. Isn't that funny?
I was going to say that. I mean, but like, I don't think anyone should be, measured against Oprah's ratings.
I know, right? But
right.
But yeah, so that was wrapping up, and then Terry won America's Got Talent and everything, and then he signed a $100 million 10-year deal in Vegas.
Wow.
At the Mirage. And so I told my wife, I said, pack your bags, we're going. So that's how we ended up here.
That's amazing. That's
amazing.
And
it was a great run. I worked with him for 12 years here, and it was great. And then pandemic hit, and that changed all that.
Absolutely. But I'm so happy that, like your persistence, and again, like we said earlier, the resiliency and the ability to pivot and make it work. I mean, it's just amazing to me what everyone has done to get through the pandemic, to adjust, and now to like get back to, almost like real life. Do we dare say it?
I know, right? Exactly. Yeah,
it's amazing.
Definitely heading towards that. It feels like, and it feels like people appreciate music more. It feels like they appreciate concerts more when you do them. The crowds are really enthusiastic, and it's almost like I felt like before the pandemic, maybe a lot of things and concerts and were getting taken for granted. And I think now people realize that music is a necessity, and I think art is a necessity. It's very, very important. And my dad being an educator his whole life, and still teaching, he teaches privately now, but music education is so important, and music is so important.
And I do think that there was a little bit of a disregard for how important all of these things are in our lives. And what got us through the pandemic was music and art and things being created and shared online. And music made remotely, and the concerts that
Absolutely.
we saw, right? The live streams, all of that stuff. I feel like
Right.
that got us through. That was there for us, when we were all isolated. That's what pulled us together. And I know I have a new appreciation for everything art and music.
Same
And
here.
just being at shows again, like there was a thought that I had a thought there for a minute. I think a lot of us had these moments where we thought, are we ever going to get back to it? Is this ever going to happen again? And
I
to
know,
see
right?
it now, right? To be there, to be at a show. I mean, I'm like loving being in a whole big crowd of people enjoying music together. It's just like, it makes me so happy.
Yeah.
And I can see it on other people's faces too, and in their reactions. The crowd energy is there.
Yeah, I think everybody's energy is just really elevated, and concerts are like over the top now, which I love.
Absolutely. So great. And so, John, how can people follow you? You're on Instagram, right?
Yep, I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. Let's see. My website, johnwackerman.com. My studio is Wackerman Studios with an S.com. And yeah, that's how I do my stuff. Drum channel, you get most of my, I think you get all the duets up on there. And yeah, like that.
Amazing. Okay, I will link to all of these things in the description and in the show notes on the podcast platform, so everyone can see where you're at and follow along and check you out
Awesome.
and be a part of the next Drum Duets release. I cannot wait for that. I can't wait to hear who else.
I know, and I got some good surprises, Sarah, that I think you like.
Awesome. I'm so excited. I cannot wait. And hopefully we get back to, getting together at shows and events and all that stuff.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But until then, I'll look forward to seeing what you're up to. And thank you so much for joining me today. I so appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on. I so appreciate it. And doing these podcasts and everything. I think they're really awesome. I've seen a bunch of them and real informative. And I think it's great to get them out there.
Thank you so much. And please say hello to your dad for me too.
I definitely will.
Absolutely. Thanks, John. Take care.
Okay. Thanks, Sarah.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in today. Join us each Tuesday for new episodes of Sarah Hagan Backstage.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, I can hear you. Yay.
Awesome.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry about that.
No.
This is awesome. So the phone call came in and threw my headphones off. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. All right. I was like,
this is good
like,
though.
Okay, where
I feel
did
like,
he go? So
I feel like this is real, Sarah. I feel like we're totally like real here.
We'll leave it all in. No.
like I gotta go. There's a bigger name on the line, Sarah. So I gotta go,